Okay, I know what you're thinking. A personal finance channel telling you to stop being cheap? Isn't this the exact opposite of what every money video on the internet tells you? Aren't you supposed to cut everything? Track every penny, cancel every subscription, make your coffee at home, and live on rice and discipline until you retire at 45? Well, sort of, but also genuinely no. Because here's something that almost nobody in the personal finance space says out loud. Being too cheap, being relentlessly, rigidly, pathologically frugal can cost you just as much money as being careless with it. Sometimes more. And the damage it does is sneakier, slower, and harder to trace than an obvious overspending problem. Which is exactly why it almost never gets talked about honestly. This video is that honest conversation. And I promise by the end of it, you're going to see frugality and spending in a completely different way. My name is John, and I spend way too much time thinking about the ways people sabotage their own financial progress from both directions. Not just by spending too much, but by spending too little on the things that actually matter. If you're someone who prides yourself on being careful with money, but secretly wonders whether your frugality is helping you build wealth or just making your life smaller, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Because today we're going deep on a topic that requires real nuance. The difference between smart frugality and destructive cheapness. The specific ways extreme penny pinching costs you real money over time, and what genuinely wealthy people actually spend their money on that most frugal people refuse to. Let's get into it. Section 1. The frugality paradox. When saving money costs you money. Here's the thing. Frugality, as a general value, is genuinely good. Spending less than you earn. Avoiding lifestyle inflation. Not buying things you don't need. These are foundational wealth-building habits, and nothing in this video is an argument against them. But here's what most people don't realize. There's a point on the frugality spectrum where it crosses from sensible to self-defeating. And that point is closer than most careful spenders think. Let me give you the most concrete example I can. A study published in the Journal of Consumer Research found that people who focus intensely on minimizing costs consistently underinvest in time-saving purchases. Things like paying for convenience, hiring help, or buying quality tools that reduce effort. And the same study found that people who bought more time by outsourcing tasks they disliked or that consumed disproportionate mental bandwidth reported significantly higher well-being and critically higher economic productivity. They earned more, not because they had more money to spend, because they had more time and cognitive bandwidth to deploy toward income-generating activities. This is a frugality paradox. The person who refuses to pay $40 for a cleaning service because they can do it themselves spends 3 hours cleaning instead. Those 3 hours could have been spent on a side project, professional development, a higher value work task, or genuine rest that restores their productivity. The $40 saved might cost $120 in lost opportunity. Now, I want to be careful here. This is not a blanket argument for outsourcing everything and hiring people to do everything. That way lies a different kind of financial recklessness. The point is more specific. When your frugality is systematically consuming time and energy that has higher value uses, your frugality is making you poorer, not richer. Section 2. The 5 ways being cheap costs you money. Let me get specific, because I think this conversation is only useful if we move from the abstract to the concrete. Here are the 5 most common and most expensive ways that excessive cheapness quietly drains your wealth. Number 1. Buying cheap things that break and need replacing. This one is so well documented it has its own economic concept. The Boots theory of socioeconomic unfairness, articulated by Terry Pratchett of all people and subsequently validated by economists studying poverty cycles. The theory goes like this. A wealthy person can buy a $200 pair of boots that lasts 10 years. A person trying to save money buys a $40 pair of boots that lasts 1 year and then needs replacing. Over 10 years, the cheap boot buyer spends $400 on boots. The expensive boot buyer spends $200. The cheap option costs twice as much over time. And this pattern, buying the cheaper version of something that wears out quickly and gets replaced repeatedly, is one of the most consistent and underappreciated wealth drains in personal finance. It shows up in tools, in appliances, in clothing, in mattresses, in furniture, in anything where quality correlates with longevity. Here's the principle. For items you use daily or heavily, buying quality is almost always a more frugal long-term decision. The frugal move is not always the cheapest upfront price. It is the lowest cost per use per year over the life of the item. Number 2, not investing in your own income. This is the one that costs people the most money and gets talked about the least. Being cheap with yourself. Refusing to spend money on professional development, education, certification, tools, or experiences that directly increase your earning capacity is one of the most expensive forms of frugality there is. Here's what most people don't realize. The return on investment for human capital development is often vastly higher than the return on financial investment. A $500 online course that helps you get a $10,000 raise represents a 2,000% return in year one alone. A $200 book that changes how you approach your career might be the highest returning $200 you ever spend. A $1,500 professional certification that qualifies you for a higher paying job tier produces returns that compound with your salary for every subsequent year of your career. The person who refuses to spend money on developing their skills because they're being careful with money is essentially choosing a lower income in exchange for short-term savings. And that trade compounds against them for years. According to data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the median weekly earnings of someone with a bachelor's degree are approximately 66% higher than someone with only a high school diploma. The earnings premium from education, from certifications, from specialized skills. These are financial returns that make almost every market investment look modest by comparison. Being cheap with your own development is not caution. It is the most expensive choice on the menu. Number 3, letting health slide to save money. I want to handle this one carefully because I fully understand that healthcare costs in many countries, particularly in the United States, are genuinely, structurally, absurdly expensive, and there is nothing cheap about avoiding medical care, and the alternative is genuine financial hardship. That's a systemic problem, not a personal failing, and I don't want to be dismissive of that reality. But here's the specific behavior I'm talking about. Skipping the gym membership because it's $40 a month and you can exercise for free. Buying the cheapest food regardless of nutritional quality because organic costs more. Never seeing a dentist because cleanings are expensive. Avoiding the doctor until the problem becomes serious. These are the subtle health economies that feel financially responsible but accumulate into something much more expensive over time. The data on this is unambiguous. A 2021 study from the American Journal of Preventive Medicine found that preventive health spending, regular exercise, routine medical visits, quality nutrition, reduces lifetime health care costs by an estimated 25 to 30%. The gym membership saves money compared to the chronic disease management it helps prevent. The dental cleaning saves money compared to root canal it helps avoid. The quality food saves money compared to the metabolic conditions it helps prevent. Your body is the primary asset through which all other wealth is created. Being cheap with it is not frugality. It is deferred maintenance on your most valuable piece of infrastructure. Number 4, undervaluing your time at trivial dollar thresholds. This one is about the psychology of small amounts. Extremely frugal people often apply enormous effort to saving tiny amounts of money because the savings feel concrete and the time cost feels abstract. Driving 30 minutes to a cheaper gas station to save $3. Spending 2 hours comparison shopping online to save $7. Clipping coupons for 90 minutes to save $11 on a grocery run. Let me do the math on that last one. 90 minutes of time to save $11 equals an effective hourly rate of approximately $7.33. If you earn $25 an hour at your job, you just paid your own time at less than 1/3 of its market rate to save $11. You lost money by saving money. Now, I understand the psychological appeal of this. The savings feel real. The time feels free. But time is not free. Time has a value. And the value of your time generally increases as your career progresses, which means the coupon clipping economics that made mathematical sense at 20 to make increasingly less sense at 35, 45, 55. Here's the rule. Be generous with your time when the financial stakes are high. Be ruthless about protecting your time when the financial stakes are trivial. Spending 3 hours researching a $20,000 car purchase is reasonable. The math works. Spending 3 hours saving $15 on groceries is a losing trade. Number 5. Cheapness in relationships and experiences. This is the most personal one, and the one I want to handle most carefully. Because there's a version of cheapness in relationships that doesn't just cost money. It costs connections, opportunities, and experiences that genuinely cannot be recovered or replaced. The person who never takes their partner somewhere meaningful because they can't justify the cost. The professional who skips every industry conference and networking event because the ticket is too expensive. The friend who always finds a reason to miss the trip, the celebration, the gathering, because they can't bring themselves to spend the money. Research on end-of-life regrets consistently identifies experiences and relationships as the source of most satisfaction, and the absence of them as the source of most regret. Money spent on meaningful shared experiences, on building and maintaining genuine connections, on being present for the moments that matter. This spending has returns that cannot be measured on a spreadsheet, but are among the most valuable investments a human life can make. The Harvard Happiness Study, the longest-running study of adult well-being ever conducted, found that the quality of relationships is the single most powerful predictor of long-term health and happiness. More than wealth, more than career success, more than physical health. The person who saves money at the cost of their relationships is making a trade that no financial spreadsheet would ever rationally endorse. Section 3. The psychology of cheapness. Why smart people do this. Now, you might be thinking, this all sounds reasonable, but why do intelligent, financially aware people fall into this trap? Because they do. Constantly. And understanding why is the first step toward breaking the pattern. Here's the thing about extreme frugality. For a lot of people, it starts as a survival mechanism. If you grew up in a household where money was scarce, where every dollar mattered, where financial anxiety was the background noise of daily life, then frugality wasn't a choice. It was an adaptation, a way of managing an environment where the consequences of spending were real and immediate. And adaptations don't automatically switch off when the environment changes. The person who learned to be hypervigilant about money during a period of genuine scarcity often carries that hypervigilance into a period of relative abundance and continues to apply scarcity brain logic to a life that no longer requires it. Psychologist Brad Klontz, who has spent his career studying what he calls money scripts, the inherited, often unconscious beliefs about money that drive our financial behaviors, found that extreme frugality is often underpinned by deep-seated anxiety about financial security that is not proportionate to the person's actual financial situation. People who build genuine financial stability continue to live in financial fear, not because the fear is justified by their current circumstances, but because the fear was learned and never explicitly unlearned. Here's what most people don't realize about that anxiety. It is not protecting you. It is not making you wealthier. A person who has $50,000 in an emergency fund and refuses to spend $200 on a meaningful experience is not being prudent. They are being controlled by a fear response that no longer serves them, and that fear is actively costing them the experiences, relationships, and opportunities that make a wealthy life worth having. This is where it gets really interesting, because the goal of personal finance is not to die with the most money. The goal is to build sufficient financial security that money stops being a source of anxiety and starts being a tool for living well. Extreme frugality often achieves the first part, the accumulation, while completely undermining the second part, the living. Section 4, the framework, cheap versus smart frugality. All right, so how do you tell the difference? How do you know when you're being appropriately careful with money and when you're being counterproductively cheap? I want to give you a simple framework that I call the 3-question test. And I want you to apply it to any spending decision you're uncertain about. Question 1. What is the cost per use over the life of this item or experience? This reframes a decision from how much does this cost to what is the real cost of this? A $300 quality chef's knife used 5 times a week for 20 years costs approximately half a cent per use. A $30 knife that dulls within 6 months and gets replaced 3 times over the same period costs significantly more per use and produces a worse cooking experience throughout. The cost per use analysis almost always reveals that quality is the more frugal choice for things you use regularly. Question 2. What is the opportunity cost of not spending this money? This is a question cheapness never asks. What income, productivity, health, connection, or experience am I foregoing by not making this purchase? If the answer is nothing meaningful, don't spend the money. But if the answer is a significant skill upgrade, or an important relationship maintenance, or a health intervention that prevents a larger problem, then the cost of not spending may be far higher than the cost of spending. Question 3. Am I making this decision from fear or from values? This is the hardest one, and the most important one. A values-based financial decision sounds like, I genuinely don't want this, and I'd rather deploy this money towards something that matters more to me. A fear-based financial decision sounds like, I can't bring myself to spend this even though I know it will be good for me. The first is smart frugality. The second is cheapness, controlling you rather than you controlling it. Section 5. What wealthy people actually spend on. Let me close the content section of this video with something that I think reframes the whole conversation. When researchers study the spending habits of genuinely wealthy people, not performatively wealthy people, not the people with expensive cars and leveraged lifestyles, but genuinely high net worth individuals who built lasting financial independence, several consistent spending priorities emerge. They spend generously on their health, quality food, regular medical care, fitness, not as luxuries, but as infrastructure investments in their primary wealth-generating asset, themselves. They spend generously on their time, outsourcing tasks that consume disproportionate energy relative to their value. Not because they can't do those tasks, but because they understand the compounding return on redirecting their cognitive bandwidth toward higher value activities. They spend generously on their learning, books, courses, mentorship, professional development. The return on human capital investment remains consistently higher than almost any financial investment available. They spend generously on experiences and relationships, travel, shared meals, meaningful celebrations, maintaining genuine connections, not at the expense of financial security, but as a recognized priority alongside it. And they are ruthlessly frugal on everything else, on things that don't contribute to their health, their time, their learning, or their relationships. They spend almost nothing. They don't care about status symbols. They don't upgrade for social signaling. They don't spend money to impress people they don't care about. The pattern is clear. Wealthy people are not uniformly frugal or uniformly generous. They are strategically generous with their spending in the categories that generate compounding returns and strategically indifferent to everything else. That is the model. Not spend less on everything. Not spend more freely. Spend deliberately. Spend where it compounds. Protect your time, your health, your skills, your relationships, and be genuinely unbothered about the rest. Look, I want to be honest about what this video is and what it isn't. It is not a permission slip to stop being careful with money. If you are genuinely overspending, if you are living beyond your means, if you have debt growing and savings shrinking, the frugality conversation is not the one you need right now. You need to spend less. Full stop. But if you are someone who has been careful, genuinely careful for a long time, if you have savings, if you have no credit card debt, if you are contributing to your retirement accounts, if you have done the responsible things and you are still reflexively, anxiously cheap in ways that are making your life smaller without making you wealthier, then this is a conversation you needed. The goal was never to save money. The goal was always to build a life, financially secure, genuinely rich in the ways that matter, free from money anxiety, and full of the experiences and connections that make the whole thing worth doing. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, getting to that life requires spending money thoughtfully, not withholding it reflexively. Smart frugality builds wealth. Cheapness just hoards it. And a life spent hoarding money you never deploy toward the things that make it worth earning is not a financial success story. It's a missed opportunity dressed up as discipline. Spend less than you earn. Invest the difference. And spend what you do spend on the things that actually compound. Your health, your skills, your time, your people. That's the whole framework. That's the video. If this landed for you today, hit the like button. It genuinely helps more people find content like this. Subscribe if you haven't already, because every week we're breaking down the psychology and the math of money in plain English, the nuanced conversations that most finance content is too afraid to have. And if you want the next step, I've got a video on exactly how to build a savings and investment system so that the money you free up by spending smarter actually goes somewhere productive automatically. It's linked right up here. I'll see you in the next one.